Hello and welcome back to another episode of the fan. Why are you laughing for? I could just see you was about to laugh.
I was trying so hard not to laugh. I was really trying so hard. Okay. We're talking about serious shit here. Serious business.
Literally.
Okay.
What was it that you said in the last podcast as well?
What did I say? It
But you went
was
on that monologue about how serious addiction should be.
right. Yeah.
Oh, funny.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Hello and welcome to the Finally Quit Porn podcast. Today,
Now you've done it, Tom.
Tintin's getting up. Tintin's
Okay.
getting up. Ugh.
Okay. Water. Okay. Welcome. Okay. Here we go. What are we going to talk about today? Do we have an idea?
No. Should we wing it? We'll just talk about
Spitting water
porn.
all over the place. Okay. All right. Can we do this? All right.
Alright, cool.
All right. Finally, so are we going to do a remember letter? That might get me to stop laughing.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I've got one. We'll do one of mine. Actually, you said in the last podcast that I would do my one in this one. So
Yeah.
it was in one of
Yeah,
the
because I thought about that. The very first one we use, of course, he's gay. How many people are going to go, oh, it's gay guys that are using porn or whatever, you know?
yeah, I don't know. I've had quite a few guys who are gay actually be interested in this program.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah, I'll read out mine though. So my remember letter, okay. I'm going to start it now. So, crippling shame and unwanted, debilitating fatigue, never ending thoughts of, am I doing this right? My confidence punched in the face, my own doing. Fear someone will find out. Thoughts of, I'm not good enough. I can't connect with people. I don't deserve anything, especially not love from a woman. A split mind, outwardly social, funny, and confident, whilst inside, a young child is constantly scared, out of his depth. Pain. What's the point? My senses are so messed up that I easily bump into people. I find it hard to lose myself in the moment, and I no longer trust myself. But this will be the last ever time, right? I say to myself, it's okay. I learned something new. This will really help me. I lie. You could give me everything I've ever wanted, the whole world, and I'd shrug. Nothing matters that much. It's mostly darkness.
Yeah. Whew. Yeah, yeah. So how did it feel when you wrote that?
It
Was
was
there
tough.
resistance? Was there resistance to it at all at first?
It's always hard to face the reality of addiction because the addicted part of the mind's never going to want you to go there. The
Yeah.
addicted part of the mind lets you go to the truth and the reality of how much suffering you're in. Then there's a chance you'll actually stop this properly. So the addicted part of the mind doesn't want you to go there. So there's a lot of resistance. When I wrote that, it was hard. I wasn't feeling good at all. The thing is, in that moment, like that was actually not long after a relapse. And it was kind of just like the thing about bumping into people is a weird one, but like basically when I'd had a bad relapse, what would usually happen is I'd look for quite a long period of time and it'd sort of start up and it would the use would accumulate. Like it'd kind of get more and more novel. So it's like the classic spin, as we talk about a lot. But what was going on is like I'd start off on social media and like I'd be scrolling and I'd see maybe like a half naked girl or something. And then the next thing would be, okay, let me look at this next thing on Instagram or TikTok or whatever it was. And then it just continued to escalate. And I'd use maybe like hashtags and there'd be like this game, this exciting game for me of how can I sort of trick myself into looking at sexual content without this being what I defined as a relapse because I never wanted to relapse because I was doing the no fap streaks. So it'd be like this weird game that I'd have with myself of just like escalating and looking at more and more sexual content. And then that would go on honestly for quite a long time, if I'm honest with myself. And I wouldn't be masturbating that whole time. I remember actually one time last year it was like just out and about, I was literally outside. The last time I looked at any sexual content, I was outside by the canal, not too far from my house, and there was people walking past, and I was like on this weird like sort of stone chair kind of thing. It's kind of hard to describe, but I was looking around me, and there was all these people walking past, and I'm there like on TikTok, kind of pretending that I'm not looking at sexual content, pretending I'm not seeking it when really I was. And then I went back to my flat, and then I laid down on my bed, and I ended up looking at more and more sexual content. And I told myself again, okay, I'm not going to actually masturbate here. But then next thing I know, I'm naked, like, and then I'm masturbating, and then I've had an orgasm. And like even before the orgasm, it's like, right, it's fine because I'm not going to actually orgasm, so it doesn't count.
Yeah.
That was the junky thinking I had. So like I really put myself into this state of helplessness where I didn't even think I was going to go ahead and look at sexual content and masturbate
Yeah.
and orgasm. But every single step of the way, I was getting closer and closer because I was in this spin. And then I ended up having the orgasm. And then, yeah, it's like the whole world around me just felt dark. And I just kind of didn't really care about much anymore. And then I went out the next day and I'd go for a walk. And like, I felt so, sounds weird, but yeah, I would genuinely like nearly bump into people because it's like, like my concentration was just gone. It's like I was so in my head that all I
Yeah.
could have was these thoughts going round and round. And I almost felt like half a human being, like I wasn't even there like anymore. Like it was so weird. And yeah, it was horrible. So,
Like a
and then I think I
zombie.
wrote that at some point. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking about that as you're looking at the content and whatever, and you haven't gone, to the extent of masturbating to the porn. People that are drug addicted or whatever, they can be thinking about it, right? Or thinking, oh, I'm not going to do it, I'm not going to do it, I'm not going to do it, or and then they go in their mind and they go, oh yeah, I am. Okay, I'm going to go to the store after work. I'm going to stop. I'm going to get the bottle of booze, right? And I'm going to go home and I'm going to make myself a drink. Well, when they think that, they haven't even had the drink yet, but they get relief, right? Because now it just goes to show how in the pathways it really is. Because it's like when I think, okay, yep, they're thinking, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. Oh, I can't do this. And then they decide, okay, yeah, I'm stopping on my way home and I'm
Mm.
going to get a bottle of vodka.
You
And
know what's
then they
interesting
feel
about
relief.
that?
What's that?
You know what's interesting about that? So obviously the first thing in our program is about deprivation thinking. And I think what would happen for me is that the deprivation thinking would, and this isn't really part of the program at all, but just some neuroscience, that would lead to like more norepinephrine being released and like basically really intense, extreme feelings of anxiety as I was leading up to it. Because in my head, I'm like, I can't look at porn, I can't look at porn, I can't look at porn, I can't orgasm, I can't orgasm, I can't orgasm. So that's going around like over and over and over,
Oh,
which means while I'm looking at this stuff on TikTok and Instagram, my brain's even more excited because it's like the forbidden fruit. It's like I'm so excited to be doing something I know I can't do. I shouldn't be doing it. But I'm not out of those feelings of deprivation in that moment. So I'm still in the feelings of deprivation of I can't do this
yeah,
thing whilst doing the thing. And it's only
yeah,
when the orgasm actually happens that I'm out of the feelings of deprivation because that's when I realize, shit, like I can do this because I just have done it. And then I'm just
yeah,
laying in bed like an absolute mess. And
yeah. What more proof do you need? You just did it.
yeah,
Right?
it's
Mhm.
crazy. It's crazy. So that feeling, the feelings of deprivation, like I'm sure we must have talked about them on this podcast before, but can you just share a bit more about that for the listeners here, Mary?
Well, you know, even though you're not necessarily totally on a conscious level, like you didn't even realize that you're telling yourself, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this. That's just an autopilot way of thinking. I can't do it, I can't do it, I can't do it. Have to stop doing this. I'm on a streak, whatever. And then it's, even though that's not totally on a conscious level, when you change the thinking to reiterate that you do have a choice, you will always have a choice. Even if you decide to stop, you can always change your mind. That's going to alleviate all those feelings of deprivation. Because we've talked about it before, where with the withdrawal from an addictive behavior, it's challenging because it's uncomfortable, but without the feelings of deprivation, it's not going to be as difficult, because when you have all the feelings of deprivation, you want to break out of those feelings, and when you're able to really understand that you have a choice in the matter and you can bypass the feelings of deprivation, then it just comes down to, okay, here's what you can expect through the withdrawal process. I'm going to tell you exactly what's going to happen, and it's temporary, and and you know what you're dealing with. So it's but without the feelings of deprivation, it's a very different experience.
Yeah.
Because people are just, going through all of that and then trying to change by getting through withdrawal, which of course nobody really does, because they're taught to avoid that,
Mm.
with distraction and substitution and all that other stuff. It's no one's ever taught, this is withdrawal, this is what you expect. Well, unless they're, withdrawing in a medically supervised situation from opiates or whatever, but I feel like they give them some other drug to help them through that withdrawal, but I don't know how they're making permanent changes in their brain at the same time, which is critical to the process and just staying free once you do get through the withdrawal process. So
Yeah, and I think such a key part of it all is understanding that your brain doesn't rewire until you've actually had those feelings of desire. And so if you're stuck in this cycle, the hamster wheel of deprivation thinking, of going, I can't look at porn, I can't look at porn, I can't look at porn, what you're going to do, whether it's subconscious or conscious, is avoid any situation possible that could lead to the feelings of desire. Because if you can't do something, why would you want to put yourself in a context, like a situation where you're going to have the thing that you can't do? So you're going to do the removal of triggers, you're going to do the distraction, you're going to be meditating more like I was, like an hour a day for a long, long time. And you're going to do everything you can to not feel that desire. But when you realize that actually you can feel that desire, connect to it, and that's what actually changes and rewires the addictive neural pathways, that's when you become truly free, because then you're no longer like removing triggers. You no longer have any conditions in your life for what you can and can't do. And that, for me, is freedom. It's freedom is having the choice, the options. As I've said this before, but if you're in prison, you don't have many options. And it's kind of similar with addiction. If you're in addiction, you feel like you don't have many options because you've set up this prison in your own mind of I can't do a certain thing. But the reality is you can do that thing. And if you're listening to this, chances are you are doing that thing. And that's more than enough evidence you'll ever need to realize that you can continue engaging. And that's what causes a lot of the challenging emotions, is these feelings of deprivation.
well, and I think too, just like the kind of the basic incorrect thinking that when people tell themselves, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this, they're trying to avoid the wanting because they don't know what to do with it. I don't want to do it, I don't want to do it. Well, how can you get a bigger wanting than when you're feeling compelled and you're feeling obsessed? I mean, compulsive desire is the biggest wanting you can get. And the truth is, you don't want to, but too bad. Whether you like it or not, that desire is going to come over you. And that's where avoiding urges and avoiding triggers is futile.
Yeah.
It's going to
But
happen. It's going to happen.
But we did have someone in the group this week actually who had some junky thinking that was, okay, so I've done phase one and I learned that I can engage my compulsive behavior. So now it's not that big of a deal, I may as well just go and engage because it's not that
Yeah.
much of a problem. But then we had to go and tackle that junky thinking again very directly and go, well, what are you doing in the program? If this wasn't a big deal, if you just
Yeah.
felt like porn was this temporary little thing that's not a big deal in your life, then how come you just signed up to our program and what are you doing here? And the same for any listeners, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do it. What I replied actually in that video to him was, look, right now I could punch myself in the face. I can
Yeah.
do that. That doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. So the other thing that we really, really teach people to do is get clear on the costs, like the remember letters I just read out. Really get clear on that and understand the pain of it. Because for me, talking about that relapse that I had last year and the suffering that I went through when I had that and the mental challenges that I faced, that was way worse than a punch in the face. And yeah, the addicted mind will make it into like a little pinch on the arm. The addicted part of the mind will make it into this tiny little minuscule thing that doesn't even matter and goes away straight away.
Yeah.
But no,
Or
that
you're just going to
relapse.
do it once.
Yeah, or
Just
you'll
want
just
to do
do it
it
once and
once.
it's not a problem,
Yeah.
and then, oh yeah, and then I can go on my streak again. It's all
Yeah.
just BS from the addicted part of the mind, and you gotta get clear and real about this. Otherwise, you won't get free. That's just the truth. Because if you think once is okay, when will it not be okay? You're just gonna
Now,
continue indefinitely.
these streaks, I think, do so much more damage than people give it credit for, I mean, it's so damaging because people hang on to them as some kind of a solution when the solution by intermittently reinforcing is making the problem worse. But it's the only sense of freedom they have, even if it comes in streaks, right? Because they
Mm.
don't know how to get permanently free. It's like, oh God, gotta hang on to my streak. And the way they're getting their streaks is by trying not to think about it and distracting and getting more and more, complex ways of distracting, more time consuming ways of distracting and all that, or, substituting other behaviors. Then they try to stop those behaviors because those start to get out of control. And then they end up, just
Well,
in a big, but they hang on because it's all they've got. They're going to hang on, gotta have some way to not do this all the time,
this
you
is
know?
this is a thing about substitution as well, is I tried this for so many years, and that's how I ended up doing those streaks in the past. I guess the meditation actually, the hours meditation each day, that did help me overcome some compulsive behaviors, but just not permanently because it didn't change the thoughts. And you need to tap into the neural pathways and change the thoughts correctly. However, what I would say about the substitution is for most of the time when I was on these streaks, I'd say like 99% of them, I was just substituting porn out for something else. Even if it's something that's quite healthy, even if it's socializing, it's still not going to lead to permanent freedom because the mental changes don't happen. I always tell that story of me in Portugal, on the 82-day streak, which I remember well when I told that girl, Danny, I was like, right, when I hit 90 days, me and her, like, we kind of were flirting a lot around 90 days and it was funny. And then I ended up hitting 82 days and relapsing and engaging again because I think some friends went out that day and some feelings came up. And the 82 days previously, I hadn't actually felt any real strong desire. And you can get to 82 days without desire if you're busy and distracted and living an awesome life in Portugal in the sun and playing football every day and socializing every day. Yeah, of course you're not going to have desire. But when the desire returns, what are you going to do? So that's why you have to accept and you have to have the desire to change the brain. It's so, so important. Now, the other thing we've not talked about much yet is benefits as well, because we have the
Yeah.
remember letter, but I assure you there's a lot of benefits to this. And you may have experienced some benefits already, but I really, really recommend writing down how your life's going to look if you actually do quit this for good
Yeah, the
and the freedom that you're
possibility.
going to
Yeah.
experience. Yeah, possibility versus
You
limitation as
know,
well.
can I go back to substitution for a minute? Just a couple things that, because it is so touted, the advice that you're going to um just substitute a healthy behavior, whether and like now I look at fitness as like, oh my God, people are just crazed about fitness. It's like over the top, it's too much, But like I had this lady in my class years ago, compulsive eater, who she was just going to get fit. She's just going to use fitness, whatever. And she would get up. She had a family she had to take care of and shit. And so she'd get up at 4 o'clock in the morning every single day. And she would go running for like a few hours. I mean, my God, you got to. And what was interesting about her too is she didn't really stop her compulsive eating because she wasn't facing it. She was just substituting this running instead. And so, but she got like bulked up. Her thighs were solid, but they were like this big around. I'm not even kidding you. She was like so fit from running all the time, but she was still doing her eating, and it was just like, it was just a whole big mess. And then the underestimating of substitution, when I've said it before, that it almost always is always you're going to substitute a mind or mood altering experience that is likely to become compulsive as well, was the story about the lady that had the gastric bypass over where I work. And she finally took her weight off, and because now she can't, right? Because I guess you think you can't. If you get gastric bypass, you can't eat compulsively. I mean, you can, but the consequences are really heinous when you end up hospitalized or dead, probably. So she started gambling, and she was like 60 years old, on ready to retire, but she's got this gambling thing going on instead of eating, right? And she embezzled $130,000 out of the account at these people rented space over where at the art center where I work, and she had to go to prison. I mean, substitution is no joke. It's like, I don't know, people are not just going to be, out there deep breathing and drinking a lot of water and having any kind of a reasonable fitness regimen
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah, for real.
What's cool is when you get through, withdrawal and addiction, then those kinds of things like fitness and whatever, you can do them in a reasonable way. You don't feel like, oh my God, I have to do this running. I got to run every day to not think about this addiction. You can do it and you can actually benefit from it. Do it in a reasonable way and it can enhance your life. But substitution, you can't bypass withdrawal from addiction by substituting, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So sorry, you were talking about benefits. Like I just had to add
Yeah,
that.
well, no, I just wanted to reply to what you're saying there, though,
Yeah.
because the question I was thinking is like, what are you running from? And that works in two ways.
Yeah.
You have literally your running, but also what are you trying to escape by staying busy all the time? What are you distracting yourself from? And the
Yeah.
answer to that is going to be the compulsive desire. And so
Right.
that's why the meditation was the only thing I would say that ever helped me to some extent. It definitely hasn't been as effective as the Beyond Compulsion method or anywhere near as effective because it doesn't tap into the desire as much, anywhere near as much. But at least with that meditation, I was sitting with a lot of discomfort and willingly accepting that temporary discomfort. And in that meditation, sometimes I would feel that desire. The problem with that is I was doing an hour's meditation every day. Like, that's a lot of work, right? That's a lot to
Got a
maintain.
time.
Yeah, it's unsustainable really to overcome an addiction by doing an hour of something every
Yeah.
day. And you don't want to live like that. You want to be free. So
Yeah.
the alternative is to rewire your thinking so that you gain permanent mental freedom and you don't need any conditions in your life at all to stay stopped correctly. So yeah, in
Yeah.
terms of the benefits though, I think that's also really important to document. I just wanted to put that out there really, because we talk a lot about the downside and the cons, and that is important, but also just want to put it out there, life is just so much better once you're free from this. And I think everyone listening will know that life can be better, but it is worth having a think about that. What life do you want to live? How do you want to feel? Peace of mind, clarity, confidence. There's a lot of things to gain from this. So highly recommend taking it all quite seriously.
And watch, the addictive part of the mind trying to convince you that you can have it both ways. You can document, this is what I want for my life. But then the addictive part of the mind, it tries to convince you that somehow you can have this and you can have addiction, because that's what it does. The addictive part of the mind, with addiction, you want it both ways. You want to do it, but you don't want the consequences. Now there's true deprivation. That's something you cannot have. You can have your addictive behavior till the day you die, but you cannot have your addictive behavior without the consequences. That you can't have. So
Yeah,
that's the real deprivation that's happening.
yeah, we had a different guy actually who's not gone through the full program yet, but he was in phase one and he was talking about porn basically being this great thing, and that's like part of him. He said that he was talking about You know,
Yeah.
what's life going to be like after porn? What was the other thing he said? Can you remember?
No, I can't remember.
Yeah, it was something around like basically missing out on porn and like it's basically glamorizing porn. And this is a really important part as well, is that pornography, what you gain from pornography is literally just a temporary escape from the withdrawal. It's a temporary escape from the discomfort of withdrawal. And so when you have your option A and option B, it does become a lot clearer. And you can realize, you know what? Porn's really not giving me what I want in life. If you think back to the start of this podcast earlier on, and I read out that remember letter, that's what porn gave me. Now, in your mind, you're going to think that porn's giving you all these different things that are amazing, but it's just not. It's just how the addictive part of the mind works. You know, you're
Yeah.
going to think, oh,
Glamorize.
yeah, it helps me escape stress. It helps me escape loneliness. It helps me escape anxiety. It helps
No,
me
it gives
be
me stress. It gives me anxiety. It makes
literally.
me lonely. It isolates me. All of it causes all those things. It doesn't handle all those things. Oh yeah, yeah. It's so misunderstood.
If it
Yeah,
handled all those things, well, carry on. You know, if you really think it handles all those things, just carry on doing it, you know.
yeah. But
You know the truth though. You know the truth. Anyone watching or listening to this knows the truth that it's not helping you with any of those things. At least I hope they know the truth.
well, and the other thing too is when you are addicted, you think, okay, this is going to feel really good. But what feels really good is temporary relief. And when you're deep enough in addiction and you have all the horrible negative consequences, that temporary relief is fleeting. You know, it's like that's all you get. You get temporary relief at a very, very high cost. But when you can get really real about it and go, okay, that's really all I'm getting, then the temporary relief, it's it's not even as glamorous, even though, yeah, when you're in addiction, withdrawal, using, it's going to give you relief. Yeah, but just get real. It's super, super, super temporary. And it's not going to change back, you know, like all of a sudden it's like going to be, oh, I just engaged in my addictive behavior and I'm blissed out for 3 weeks. Ooh, I just feel so good. No, it's like, no, it will pretty much you go, oh, there I got the relief. Now, fuck, I'm right back where I started, you know, miserable.
Yeah. You know what would actually happen for me is I'd engage, get out of those feelings of deprivation, and then a few hours would pass by. Usually I'd go and absolutely crumble and be an absolute mess, to be honest. But
Yeah,
then sometimes I would start to go down the route of, right, I need to get out of these like horrible feelings. I need to have a lot more self-compassion for myself. So I start to be a lot more compassionate, go eat some pasta and like some tomato sauce with some chicken and cheese. And I
yeah,
remember just eating this really unhealthy meal this one time afterwards. And just trying to be like compassionate to myself. I think one time like I ordered a pizza. Anyway, that would usually happen. And then like a few days would go by and then the withdrawal would hit different and I'd be
yeah,
like properly back in it again. And then I'm
yeah,
like, you know what? All that empathy, all that compassion is not really what you want right now. And
yeah,
like it's not actually serving any purpose. I think the better thing to do is obviously don't be too hard on yourself because if you're here listening to this, like you're ahead of 99% of people in terms of the efforts you're making to quit something, and that's something
yeah,
to be proud of. It's like I'm proud of myself, to be honest with you, for reaching out and setting up this podcast despite even being in addiction and finding you, well, you found me, and that's just like a blessing, you know. I'm so grateful for that, and
yeah,
hopefully everyone listening to this can listen, take a few things away and go, okay, I'm going to start doing this a little bit different now and then actually gain some freedom from this problem. That's what I'd love to hear. You know, guys getting in touch and saying,
yeah.
right, this podcast has helped a lot. So hopefully it can help. But yeah, I just want to say like the best thing you can do in terms of being compassionate towards yourself is quit this for good. You
Yeah.
know, listen to these podcasts if they help you. Write a remember letter, get serious about this stuff, and you will find freedom.
I want to add about this, you know, it's kind of the sign of the times. It's the new way of thinking that, you know, and I get like everything's adversarial and we want to be kinder and all this kind of stuff. And everything you hear, you know, about addiction stuff is you got to be gentle with yourself. You got to be compassionate with yourself. And I mean, a lot of people that they see me as like, you know, a hard ass, whatever. I don't even care anymore. So, but because the truth of the matter is, if you're gentle with the addictive part of your mind and you show compassion to the addictive part of your mind, it's going to steamroll you and you are going to be stuck in addiction because the addictive part of the mind hits below the belt. It doesn't fight fair. It hits you when you're down. It tries to get you down and then hit you some more, you know, and it's just, you can be kind to your rational self and to your child self by taking care and getting this shit out of your life, you know, but you can't be gentle and overcome addiction. It's just not going to work, but it's super, super, super popular. And yeah, we need more kindness in the world. But I mean, I told you about the guy at the art center. We got a guy who's an addict, right? And he's scaring people. He's aggressive. And now a couple days ago, we found him. Well, thank God one of the art kids didn't walk into the bathroom. It was an adult, went in there. He's completely naked in the bathroom. And I'm like, enough kind. You know, I'm sorry that you are addicted and you are having troubles in your life. Keep your fucking clothes on, dude. There's children here, you know, so
Yeah.
we're gonna exclude him from the art center finally, you know, but I mean, I get all this kindness and we do need more kindness in the world. We do, but when it comes to addiction, kindness and gentle is and compassionate with that part of you is not going to get you free. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
You know that guy in the art center? Is that the same guy that you told me about like a week or two ago?
Yeah. So he initially he just sees, I don't know if he's homeless, but he's addicted because he said he was addicted because he was trying to lock himself into we have an all user bathroom, which is a single stall. And he was trying to lock himself in there and he kept muttering about being addicted and muttering about his addiction disease. People have no idea. Naming addiction as a disease, the fallout we're going to have from that is crazy. Anyway, so he's muttering and we're trying to get him out of the building but he scares me because he just gets this kind of crazy look in his eye, you know, and he also scared one of the music students' moms who was in the hall waiting because he went and like punched a door like real aggressively. So she came up to the desk and said, "Hey, there's this guy, he scared me." And he had come to my desk out of the blue and like he just shoved this piece of paper underneath we have plexiglass since COVID. We have plexiglass screens on our windows. Shoved it in the hole and he's like, here. And he was yelling at me about, do you like your job? And just like super aggressive yelling at me. And so then finally, with the bathroom situation, in the all user, we're trying to get him out at like 9:30 at night, which is not ideal. Me and my little co-worker, who's a very, very, you know, small woman. And so then finally I told my boss, I'm like, hey, this guy is becoming a problem, you know, and then so we filed the report, but then yesterday they messaged me and said that someone walked in. So he went from the all user bathroom to the main bathroom, the public bathroom.
Yeah.
He was just full on naked, took all his clothes off and he's in the bathroom. We're like,
Yeah.
this is not okay, you know, and he's addicted. And now, of course, he's mentally ill, right?
Well, I remember you saying about him like a few weeks ago, and like you were worried about him then, and
Yeah,
like yeah, and it sounded quite scary even then, you know, for you
yeah,
and being there. And
yeah,
I was thinking even then, like, yeah, this guy needs to be stopped. And I know you were thinking that as well. Like you wanted to get rid of him then and there, right? And
yeah,
that's escalated to this point where he's getting naked in your art
yeah,
center, which is meant to be a very wholesome place. And
yes,
that kind of that's what happens with addiction is things escalate. And it's like
exactly.
the sooner you can have someone to tell you the truth and be direct with you, the better. Because I mean, for a lot of guys that come to us, especially, you know, marriages, divorces, you know, there's a big correlation there in terms of people who are either about to go through a possible breakup or they have been through one, they have been through a divorce. And I think that's the big thing as well, is that with the porn addiction in particular, it can really, really impact relationships and things can escalate. So I think it is important to stop this sooner rather than later. And I'd say that's just another thing to add into your remember letter, to be honest with you, is like talk about the fears and the consequences of where this could lead you. I know in my remember letter, I talked about, well, not in my remember letter actually, in my option A, I talk about, you know, being stuck in this porn hell cycle forever. That was one of my options on my 10 list option for option A. And I think that was quite an important one for me. It's just acknowledging that, yeah, if I don't actually quit this is just going to go round. You know, this is going to be an indefinite cycle that's never going to end. And that is the reality of addiction, because those neural pathways are going to remain the same.
Yeah. Yeah. And this guy's just, he totally is escalating. And then when the other night when we were trying to get him out of the building, when he was muttering about his addiction disease, I just told my coworker, I'm like, I'm going to lock myself in the office and you should come with me. You know, and I'm just like bolted down the hall, got in the office, locked the door. She came in with me, and he finally came down the hall, and then he stood. We have our windows, we have glass windows around our office, and he stood right in the lobby, smiling and staring at us. And like, I know he's staring at us and he's taunting us, you know, and very passive aggressive. And I'm like, okay, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? Finally, I just looked over at him and I smiled and I said, have a good night. And then he kind of walked out the front door and I was like, thank God, you know. But just then our janitor came in, our custodian. And so that felt a little better because we had, you know, he seems to respond better to men, you know, like he'll listen to them more or whatever, or take it more seriously. So, but he was just taunting us and it was scary. Yeah. So, but there's this idea that you can't violate people's rights, you know. I'm like, bullshit. You think he's not violating people's rights? Taking all his clothes off in the bathroom and scaring us? That's violating people's rights, you know. What is this entitled privilege crap that, you know, anything goes, you know?
Yeah.
This is getting off addiction onto another topic, but he's an addict, you know?
Yeah.
And we
I
have
think
to be gentle and compassionate.
yeah,
No,
I think that's the
I'm not
thing
gonna be gentle
nowadays.
and compassionate. I'm gonna club him if he comes near me, you know. Look out, dude. You know?
Yeah, yeah. I think like it can go like both ways. Like it's kind of like a spectrum of like being like compassion, I think is always going to be a good thing. So there'll be a reason why that guy's ended up the way he is. You know, he's
Yeah.
probably had an awful childhood. He's probably had a series of events that have led to him to drugs, maybe alcohol and whatnot. And there will be a ton of reasons. And so you can be compassionate with all of those things. But I think in the context of how do you quit porn, that compassion for what's happened in someone's life before is irrelevant because it doesn't tap into addictive neural pathways. And so all of that work can be done separately with maybe a therapist or with other
Yeah.
techniques. Maybe you want to get into internal family systems or start meditating an hour every day and really sort of connect to inner child parts of yourself and so on. But in terms of compassion and addiction, it can be very risky to be compassionate towards yourself because what you're likely going to be doing if you're overly compassionate with yourself is actually you're compassionate with the addicted part of your mind, not the rational self. And that's where people go wrong. So yeah, be compassionate as you like to the rational and child self, but just not with the addicted part of the mind. Otherwise, you're back in this indefinitely.
And also that people aren't going to put up with your bullshit. That's one of the consequences of addiction that will drive you to try to find a solution. You know, if everyone is just like, oh, it's cool, you're just troubled, and we're just going to be compassionate and gentle with you. Well, that's one less consequence because everyone's just like going to coddle you, you know, rather than go, hey, you don't get to take your clothes off in the bathroom where there's children, you know. No, it's
Yeah.
like that's part of the consequences that drive you to finding a solution. But, you know, they also, the big thing around here is that people don't have access to treatment. Oh my God, we have put so much money toward treatment. As taxpayers, we're paying up like crazy toward addiction treatment. But the problem is the addiction treatment is not working, and nobody's looking at that. Nobody's going, oh, maybe it's the addiction treatment that's the problem, Maybe we need to do something different. Oh no, let's just try to find another way, to get them to, not think about it or whatever, or medicate them. We've got a number of people at the Arts Center that have challenges, and you can see like the medications they put them on, they get very manic, and a lot of them are more harmless maybe than this guy or whatever, but medications, they have those medications they put people on have so many side effects, and they're not a solution because they are addictive as well. So it's
I think mental health support worldwide is bad right now. I mean, maybe it's better than it's ever been in some ways though, but in England anyway, we have like these waiting lists at the moment for the NHS, the National Health Service, so people can't get therapy right now. And I had this woman call me up last week when I was doing my overnight shift at Samaritans, and she was saying how she had been on this waiting list for over 1 year. She finally had like an appointment to see if she could get therapy. And then what happened is they said to her, her mental health is so bad that we can't accept you onto our therapy scheme right now because your mental health's too bad for it. It's like, what? How does that work? So then she didn't even get any support. And then she's there suicidal calling me, who's there helping as a volunteer. So yeah, it's really sad how bad the support out there is. The other thing you mentioned a minute ago was about how you do need to like kind of have consequences in your life, otherwise you won't change. So when I did my life coaching course, the number one thing was people don't change until their desire to change is greater than their desire to stay the same. So I remember when I was around 20 years old, I was in a relationship with this girl and I really liked this girl, but I was in real bad porn addiction, masturbating, looking at porn very, very frequently. Back then, never told anyone, literally no one knew about it. Friends, family, football team, no one would ever know about any of that stuff at all. My girlfriend didn't know at all. I cheated on that girlfriend because I was in this porn addiction, not to excuse my behavior because I was really wrong, but I cheated on her because I'd seen a really attractive girl on a night out once and I went and tried to have sex with this girl. Didn't even successfully have sex with the girl because I had erectile dysfunction. So that's another thing, another reason. Anyway, come home from the holiday. I have guilt around this girl and what happened with her, this relationship, for ages. Didn't tell the girl for ages. So I stayed in a relationship with her because I was in such a bad addiction. I just like needed someone. Anyway, I just became weaker and weaker as the days passed on. My habits got worse and worse. I was looking at porn more and more. And then I got obsessed trying to build a business online, and that became compulsive. It was a gambling business, believe it or not. So I got into gambling real bad. and then this girl breaks up with me. And that was probably the best thing that ever happened because when that girl broke up with me, reality hit. And I'm like, shit, like this girl who I'd been in love with since I was like 15 has broke up with me. Like, I need to change something. So I go down and I play FIFA with my mate, like play a PlayStation game with my best friend. And I was like laughing and joking about this breakup. And I was like, I actually felt quite good about it. I genuinely did. But inside, it was like, I was just in such a bad place that I was so desensitized to everything. But after that, I decided, right, enough's enough here. I need to quit. So then I went on a mission trying to quit porn. I got into self-development, read so many books. That's when I went out to Portugal, started this business online, and things did pick up for me. And I started to do these streaks and I built some confidence and started getting better and better. Started to talk about it a little bit more with a few people. And then I started this podcast, I guess, a few years ago. And then eventually I met you. But yeah, point is, through that girl breaking up with me, I actually was faced with the reality of my addiction and the problem it was causing me. And that's actually what led to me eventually getting here, starting this podcast, and actually learning how to quit pornography properly in the right way. So, yeah, facing that reality is just so essential if you want permanent freedom.
Yeah, enabling addiction It's not, it doesn't help because what if she was like, oh, it's okay, Tom. You can just go ahead and cheat on me and do porn and everything. I'm going to just be here for you and I'm going to be compassionate with you because you have this problem.
Yeah,
You'd probably still be there, you know?
literally. I would. Right, we should probably wrap it up here because I've got through second liter in about an
Yeah.
hour and it's so hot in here. So we'll wrap it up here. But thanks so much for joining me once again, Mary. Thank you to everyone listening. We hope this podcast has helped you. If you would like free training to learn more about the Beyond Compulsion method, go to www.thomasmolyneux.com where you can learn the basics, really, like some of the most interesting parts of this program, and you can gain a bit more information. So yeah, go and check that out. Any questions at all, fire them over to tom@finallyquitporn.com. And I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Any final words from you as well, Mary?
No final words from me. I think I've had plenty of words today.
Yeah, perfect.
Probably too many words in some people's opinions.
Oh, I'll be okay. It'll be
Yeah.
okay. All right. Thanks a lot for listening. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.